A very good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a new day at the 16th edition of Renewable Energy India Expo. I'm your host, Manu, and this session is powered by Indo-German Energy Forum. The topic of discussion would be Agrivoltaics, exploring AgriPV potential in India, and the session will focus on the following key issues: aspects for defining APV in India, possible business models and implementations in India, legal aspects and their relevance for land conservation policies, technology suitable for AgriPV, research and policy framework on APV in India. And to take the session forward, I would like to call upon stage our esteemed moderator, Mr. Rahul YVK from Indo-German Energy Forum. A huge round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. To join him, I would like to call upon stage our first panelist, Professor Eike R. Weber, Vice Chair, European Solar Manufacturing Council, ESMC. Another huge round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Our next panelist joining them on stage is Ms. Kalpana Sastry, the Managing Director, AG Hub. Can we have another generous round of applause for her, please? The next panelist who will be joining us is Mr. Vivek Saraf, CEO and founder Sunseed. The next panelist joining us today is Mr. Deepak Zade, Assistant Vice President, Industry Service, Green Energy and Sustainability to SUD. And now, the next panelist is Mr. Moshe Horowitz, VP Global Business Development, Solar Geek. And now I would request our moderator, Mr. Rahul YVK, to take the stage and take the session forward. The stage is all yours, sir. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. So in this session, wherein we are exploring the AgriPV potential in India, we would be starting with like 6 presentations by all the dignitaries sitting here on the dais. The first presentation will be by Professor Eike Weber, the Vice Chairman of European Solar Manufacturing Council, ESMC. Professor Weber had studied mathematics and physics at the University of Cologne. After graduating in 1972, he took on an assistant position at RWTH Aachen in Germany and finished his doctorate studies in physics. He's worked with several prestigious institutions like Fraunhofer ISA, Tohoku Gaiken University, Japan, Kyoto University in Japan, and later he was also the director of Fraunhofer Institute of Solar Energy Systems in Freiburg. I would now welcome Dr. Weber to start his presentation.
Thank you very much. It's a real pleasure to be here. I have to confess it's not the very first time I'm here in India. I'm really very, very interested to help the Indian-European, the Indian-German cooperation and exchange, because what we are all aware of is really we are just at the beginning of the solar age. I guess this decade, the 2020s, will be the key decade for the penetration of solar energy all around the world. And of course, I will show you a few slides to this as an introduction. What most people are not aware, that right now already 80% of all new investments in energy technology go into renewable energy. Yes, it is true there are still coal-fired power plants built in China and maybe even in India, which is very sad. However, 80% of all investments in new energy power plants go into renewable energy. This is a number which is not really known out in the economics world, where you always hear the stories about those old coal-fired power plants. Investments in coal-fired power plants are lost assets. Investments in nuclear energy are lost assets. Investments in renewable energies, these are the investments of the future, which really will be very effective. And yes, that's exactly the point I wanted to make. What is as well not really known is already in the last 30 years, we had this breakneck growth of photovoltaics. As a matter of fact, the slope, if I would start from 1990, is about 37%, but even since 2010 till today, it is still more than 25% compounded annual growth. There is hardly any technology which has for many decades grown annually by 20, 30, 35%. So it's a really remarkable success story which we are having behind us. One word about technology, or a word more. 95% of all photovoltaics is crystalline silicon technology. Although sometimes the attention is more on niche, thin film, nano, quantum technologies. 95% of today's PV market is crystalline silicon technology. And of course, most of it today is monocrystalline. You had a couple of years ago the big hype about the so-called multicrystalline silicon. I was myself part of it. But today, efficiency trumps everything, and efficiency you get with monocrystalline silicon. So this is the reason that today this is the name of the game. And what kind of technologies? We are right now at the change from the second to the third generation of crystalline silicon PV technology. The old aluminum back surface technology had an efficiency limit of about 20%. Then today, PERC technology is what governs the world. I guess here's a laser. And PERC technology has a glass ceiling of about 24%. The theoretical limit of silicon is 29%. So now we are working on the transition from these first and second generation to the high efficiency silicon solar cells. And there are technologies like TOPCon and heterojunction technology, which promise to give us something like 26% efficiency. The world record of 27% is done by TOPCon. But of course, we will not finish there. We want to go beyond this, and the next fourth generation will be tandem solar cells. Tandem solar cells where you have a silicon cell on the bottom and then on the top a cell with a higher band gap. For instance, 3-5 perovskites, even other possibilities, and they allow then to go through the glass ceiling of 29% towards 30, 32, 35% efficient cells. So the world of photovoltaics is still a highly innovative, it is a really still very technology-driven area of industry, and therefore this decade till 2030 will be so extremely exciting. In 2016, when I was still director of the Fraunhofer Institute, I convened the first terawatt workshop where many of the world's famous scientists are involved. For instance, you might know Martin Green. Some people call him the father of the Chinese PV system because out of Australia, all the Chinese PV technology was born, and many other well-known people. And in 2016, we made these forecasts, which are shown here. And if we go into today, we can say we have reached the first terawatt installation last year, and you see it is on our most optimistic growth curve. Among all the curves which we discussed at the workshop, the 1 terawatt achieved in March 2022 is right on the most optimistic curve. And this means in 2030, we can safely expect several terawatt annual production and globally accumulated production in the area of 5, 6, 8 terawatt. This is really where we are heading, and this is why I really say what we had up to now is just the embryo. The technology, the solar technology is in this decade really going off from the gigawatt to the terawatt world. And of course, we will expect to reach in 2050 of the order of 30 to 50 terawatt, the upper blue curve there. And this will be achieved with an annual production of about 3 terawatt, which we might reach as early as 2030. So today's 300 to 400 gigawatt production will grow to 1 to 3 terawatt by 2030. This is why I call this decade as the solar energy decade. And now let's see, yes, these are these two numbers which I just discussed. However, solar energy is an area consuming technology because the sunshine is a relatively distributed energy flux to Earth. We need huge areas. Just as a ballpark number, we need 1 hectare for 1 megawatt of solar power. And this means if you scale 1 megawatt to 1 gigawatt, you need 1,000 hectares. And if you want to have a terawatt, you need 1,000,000 hectares. So you talk about sizable areas. They are still small compared to the total size of the countries and the globe, but sizable areas. And therefore, where do we get these areas? Of course, we should cover all our roofs. We should cover all our parking lots. But even if we do this, we still need more area. And then the question is, should we cover land which can be potentially used for food production, for energy harvesting, for electricity production, or shouldn't we combine this? And therefore, the concept of AgriPV, which was really born in 1981 by the founding director of Fraunhofer ISE, Adolf Götzberger, whom I had the pleasure to really meet and know quite intensively. In 1981, he published the first paper on the dual use of area for agriculture and solar energy. And this means you can use this electricity for your own consumption for the farmers. You can as well create power purchasing agreements with neighbors, local residential and industrial estates. This would be number 2. And of course, you can as well feed in the power into the grid and help to be a power plant. So all these possibilities exist. Any agricultural PV plant should first serve the own power needs. Second, should serve the power needs of the neighbors because they can still profit from the very low production cost. And then, of course, there will be as well opportunities to feed into the grid. And of course, we all, and in this session, you will see more examples of agri-photovoltaic systems. They are constructed all over the world, and including, of course, India, what we are talking about today. We have estimated that it is no problem to cover all the PV need of Germany, which we can estimate to be 300 gigawatts. This would need 400,000 area hectares, and this would mean only 3% of the land which is used for agriculture can cover the solar power needs of all Germany. This is a no-brainer that we will cover a large fraction of our energy needs in this way. Oh, thank you very much. This is so kind of you. And of course, one can make this very easy comparison. You can use area to grow your crops, which is symbolized by saying 100% wheat. And you can use area for photovoltaics. And if you use 1 hectare, you have 100% wheat and 100% solar electricity. But if you combine the same 2 hectares, you get 80% wheat. You might have a little bit less harvest because of the shading and because of the needs for the PV installation. And you get a little bit less solar electricity compared to devoting the land completely to solar electricity. But then you have 80% and 80% and 80% and 80%, and at the end you have fully 60% more of wheat